The Other Side of the Fence by Elissa S. Chapter 3. With the holidays over, there were jobs to be done, not just for the grown-ups, now school had begun. Each household had their own morning routine. Some kids looked polished and others unclean. House number 1 seemed to always run late. In a rush for the bus, they ran fast out the gate. The 8-year-old Page twins, Ruby and Jack, loved catching the bus and sat down the back. This year, however, they would be linked to the youngest Page, Lily, whose hand had been inked. Lily stared at her hand, but could not yet read. It said bus, so she'd need to run at top speed. That's just what they did as the bus rumbled by, but Lily tripped over and started to cry. Jack and Ruby ran back to give her some help. They took her bag while she continued to yelp. In house number 2, there was less of a rush. They ate healthy breakfast with a glass of fruit crush. Their clothes were neat and hair had been combed. They were ready to leave once their teeth had been foamed. Jonah went first at a blistering pace, even though they were early and it wasn't a race. Freya was fast and stayed close behind, all the way up the hill where the roads start to wind. When they reached the bus stop, they ran and played ball, throwing and catching as it bounced off the wall. As the bus reached the stop, they had time to chat while the Pages arrived, hopped on and sat. House number 3 was a little more calm. Sailor wore beads and a colourful charm. She was starting year 2 and was looking quite tall, but Tuck seemed tiny and not ready at all. He tripped and tumbled in his new school shoes. With an oversized bag he was sure to lose. Then he waved goodbye and dawdled away. Sailor picked flowers while Tuck seemed to sway. They joined in the games till the bus reached the stop and laughed with the Pages who sat down with a flop. When all were seated and the bus drove away, they wondered why the Skinner boys had not joined them today. Back at the Blue House, all was revealed. The boys would be driven. The deal had been sealed. Will was all dressed and ready to go, but it seemed the others were a little too slow. Ethan was toddling about without shoes, being chased by his mother, who he just couldn't lose. Even whilst juggling his shoes and her bag, she captured the 2-year-old scallywag. Harley looked sad, and the reason was clear. He would not be attending big school this year. Only Will had on school clothes and was starting year 1, which left Harley at home, missing out on the fun. Finally, all 3 had been packed in the car to be driven to school, which wasn't too far. Mrs. Page came out to wave from the gate, saying, "Hurry back now, remember our date." Mrs. Skinner had hoped Mrs. Page would forget, but she had to go now so as not to upset. When the drop-off was done, Mrs. Skinner came back and then knocked on her door, which was open a crack. "Come through to the kitchen," Mrs. Page called out. "Hurry, you two, so I don't have to shout." When they got to the kitchen, Mrs. Page looked shocked. "I'm surprised to see 3 of you here," she mocked. "I thought Harley would be starting kindy today. I know Lily was hoping he'd be there to play." Mrs. Skinner was feeling a little bit stung. She said, "He's 4, and I think he's too young." "That's your decision," Mrs. Page replied, "but who would it hurt if he gave it a try? That's all I'll say, because we're here to cook. Please help me by reading this recipe book." The day marched on and the place was a mess, but Mrs. Page did not seem to care less. She had flour on her face and jam in her hair, but she smiled and baked as if unaware. Then Mrs. Skinner let out a shrill squeal, dropping the apple she'd been trying to peel. "Oh my, I'm late!" Mrs. Skinner cried out. "I can't leave poor Will just standing about. I'm sorry to leave you with such a big mess, but I must get home and change out of this dress." "Next time wear an apron," Mrs. Page said. "We'll be busy all week baking cakes, flans and bread. Perhaps if Will went on the bus with the others, you'd have more time to hang out with us mothers. Anyway, shoo, I'll see you tomorrow. If you don't have an apron, there's one here to borrow." The Skinners rushed out, feeling confused. Mrs. Page kept on smiling and seemed amused. They finally realized she meant what she said. They were hers for a week, which filled them with dread. Another surprise would come later on when the misters got home and joined in the con. Mr. Skinner was dropped off by the carpool that ran every day to and from school. Before Mr. Skinner had gone inside, Mr. Page arrived and now stood at his side. He smiled and said in a voice clear and strong, "I've got something to show you. It won't take too long." Mr. Skinner was puzzled, but followed behind. His day had been long and he couldn't unwind. He rubbed his forehead and said with a sigh, "I can't be home late. I really must fly. I've got homework to mark and lessons to plan, but I'd prefer to sit down in front of a fan." "Now that's more like it," Mr. Page chuckled. "Get some work boots on and those school shoes unbuckled. Behind this door is a special treat, where us men can come and put up our feet. Some call it a shed, but it's my own man cave, where I can relax and at times misbehave. There's a TV for sports, air hockey and pool. Here's my workbench with brackets to hold every tool. Last but not least, there's a fridge and a couch. Admit it, you're jealous. Say something, you grouch." "I'm not very handy," Mr. Skinner replied. "A musician needs fingers, so I've never tried." "We'll soon fix that," said Mr. Page. "Building is fun, you'll soon engage. Mr. Skinner, this week we will build many things, and you'll keep all your fingers for plucking those strings. Just give it a try and your love will grow. But for now, come with me, I have more to show." They walked all around the Pages' home, inspecting the doors, roofing and chrome, until finally one room made him feel inspired. His mind started racing and he no longer felt tired. The room was a bedroom, not that you could tell. He at once felt transported as if by a spell. The bedroom was tucks, but it looked like space. There were planets and stars all over the place. The bed was raised and shaped like the moon, with a sliding curved lid just like a cocoon. The stairs to the bed seemed to be floating and were painted with a glow-in-the-dark coating. "You're speechless," boasted Mr. Page. "Themed bedrooms like this are now all the rage. I have to admit, someone else did help out. Mrs. Lovejoy's an artist, so I gave her a shout." "It really is great," marvelled Mr. Skinner. "This themed room idea is really a winner. I wish I was handy and could do what you do, but I'm no good at fixing. It's sad, but it's true." "I'll be your teacher," Mr. Page directed. "Come back tomorrow with your theme selected. Let's give your kids a super surprise. We'll meet after work and I'll bring some supplies." The week went on and each day was busy. Mr. Skinner was tired and the missus was dizzy. They were building, cooking, painting and sewing, while three little boys' curiosity was growing. At the end of the week, all the neighbours came by to check out the house and eat homemade pie. The Skinner parents were happy and bright, but the Skinner boys felt like things were not right. They followed the kids to their new bedroom, which had been transformed from its usual gloom. The walls were now painted with bright green leaves, with three cheeky monkeys who performed on trapeze. The beds were now perched in pretend tree limbs and were covered in bedspreads with leafy green trims. The beds had no ladders, just rope to climb down, so why were the Skinner boys wearing a frown? Sailor was thrilled and kept spinning around, while Tuck searched the walls till more creatures were found. "Look over here," he said with a squeak. His excitement had made it quite hard to speak. "There's a tiger stalking behind that big tree, and a snake over there. Come close and see." So Jack climbed the rope to the highest bed, saying, "I think I'll stay here with you guys instead." "Wow, Tuck, it's great. Your mum sure can paint." Will replied, "Yeah, but the fumes make me faint." "I thought you'd be happy," snapped Tuck with a scowl. "I'll clean it all off then. Go get me a towel." Sailor moved, so she blocked the door, saying, "I don't want you two to fight any more. We know what we're doing, and you should be glad, perhaps even grateful to Mum and Jack's dad." "We're sorry," said Harley. "Will just got a fright. He's not used to sleeping up there at that height." Will shouted, "Harley, you know that's not true. I can climb higher and faster than you." "I hope you don't think I am starting a fight, but it's happening so fast, it just doesn't seem right. My mum won't stop cooking, and now she can sew. She made new curtains and even bread dough. Dad's changing too now he thinks he can build. This room is too much. I'm not feeling thrilled. There's no room in the garage for our van anymore, just paint cans and tools all over the floor. I wish I could say that was it, but I catch the bus now so my mother can knit. She also thinks Harley can now go to school, so forgive me for thinking your plan isn't cool. Before anyone else could make things worse, Ruby shuffled them out while clutching her purse. Then she pulled the 3 Skinner boys off to the side. She had words of comfort she wished to confide. Boys, this must be hard, she said. I wish I could say there's smooth sailing ahead. It's much easier for me because I'm a page. We built here first, so we're the first stage. Things in your life are changing so fast, but I promise these feelings of doubt won't last. Please stick to the plan and you will soon see how great your new life at the lake can be. As they left the room to rejoin the group, the adults were tasting some homemade soup. That is good, Mr. Wilson applauded. For a great spread like this, you should be rewarded. Starting this week, you'll be my guests for water sports and mountain hiking quests. Our family will show you the joys of the lake to give thanks for this food and wonderful cake. The Skinners just smiled. They had little choice. Fear had made them all lose their voice. This week it seemed they would need to be fit, so when everyone left, they laid down for a bit. The end.